of the galaxy. "This time is different," she said. The old man spat smoke and grunted again. The Gate Network had opened more than 1,300 solar systems to humanity, almost all of them with 1 or 2 or 3 planets in the Goldilocks zone. Under hundreds of suns, evolution had improvised new answers to the overwhelming question, what is life? With carbon and nitrogen, hydrogen and sunlight and time, the possibilities weren't limitless, but they were mind-boggling. The DNA and asymmetric chirality of organic life on Earth and its Sol system colonies turned out to be idiosyncratic in a wide and creative universe. Even animals, shaped by the same selective pressures to look similar to Terran life, the grass trees of Baragaun, the humpbacked pigeons of Nova Brazil, the skinfish of New Eden, only needed a glimpse under a microscope to show they were as different from their Terran counterparts as a bull from a bicycle. A human being could eat all day and still starve to death in the great garden of Sigurta, surrounded by bright fruits and soft vegetables, trees heavy with fat birds, and rivers filled from bank to bank with things that almost passed for trout. The forest of life was varied and exotic, and the trees there didn't get along with each other. Or most of them didn't, anyway. At first glance, Auberon's system didn't seem exceptional. 3 modest gas giants, none of them larger than Saturn. A single, wet, life-bearing planet with a large but unexceptional moon. There were no alien artifacts the way there had been in New Home and Corazon Sagrado. No weirdly pure ore profiles like on Illis or Persephone. Just a scattered handful of planets. A couple of asteroid belts, and a star burning its slow way toward a billion-year distant collapse. Among the hundreds of systems to which humanity was heir, it could have been any place. But it was now the most important human system outside of Earth, Laconia, and maybe Baragaun complex. Only a few decades into its settlement, and it already boasted a dozen cities, each of them in the middle of built-up rural areas like the floral disk in the center of a daisy. There were 6 dwarf planets with mining and refining developments big enough to have permanent civilian populations growing around them. There was a transfer station built to accommodate the trade between it and the other, less fortunate colony worlds. It was the second most developed human settlement in the universe, and on track to keep growing for centuries. And the thing that made its first settlers the winners of history's land rush lottery was that, apart from competing for sunlight, the biosphere of Auberon barely interacted with the plants and animals of Earth. There was a famous image of an Earth apple tree and an Auberon native tree, their roots intertwined as if each were acting as soil for the other. That mutual biochemical shrug made open-air farming possible on Auberon. Contamination by local organisms tended not to mean more than a mild case of gas, and because it was the most habitable of the new planets by orders of magnitude, it was developed. Because it was developed, it was influential. Because it was influential, it was wealthy. And because it was wealthy, it was corrupt. And now it was Birjar Rittenaur's problem. A woman's face appeared on his handheld. She had a prominent chin, long white hair in tight curls, and a high forehead. Birjar tapped his fingers against his thigh. He should know this one. A face like a spade. A spade is a garden shovel. Shovel. Michel Cheval, he said, president of the Agricultural and Food Production Workers' Union. The handheld shifted to a young man's face, pleasant, neutral, with a mole at the side of his mouth that reminded Birjar of a cartoon rabbit. That was the image he'd built. Cartoon rabbit with a basketball. He knew it was the right image, but he couldn't make the jump to why he'd chosen it. "Damn it," he said, and tapped the man's profile. His name was Augustin Belchek. He was the deputy minister in charge of planetary transportation security.